What is up, guys and gals? Today we're going to show you how to break down, service, and reassemble a Penn Powergraph 4000 with some tips and tricks along the way. First thing we want to do is look for a schematic on this reel, just so we know what parts are in there and any part numbers if we need to replace them, as well as how to put it back together. In lieu of that, you can also take pictures along the way. This way you have a record of what goes where and how to put it back in. All right, let's get started. I'm gonna take that spool off by undoing the drag knob, popping it straight up. Next, I'm gonna remove the handle, undoing this cap on the side right here, and removing that screw. Just pulls right out. Maybe it does. Uh-oh, let's hope it does. It does just pull right out. Okay, let's go ahead and remove this click gear and the washer that's on top of it. Now we're going to remove that screw right there and undo that rotor nut right there. Lefty loosey for this one. Straight up. Now you can rock as you pull up to remove that rotor. Now before I jump to this part, I'm going to open the side plate. There's 4 screws on the side. They're all the same length. Now we have all those out. We're just going to pop this side cover up and remove it. And now we're going to rotate that pinion gear or that block down by turning the pinion gear. Uncovering 2 screws in here. Just going to back those out, pull that shaft out. What I noticed is there's some corrosion on those screws. So hopefully this shaft pulls straight out. There we go. Now we can pull this main gear out, like so. Now I'm also going to remove this block and the crosswind gear before I go any further. And now I'm going to remove this eccentric. To do that, we're going to remove the screw in the bottom. Notice under there, there's a washer. It's a lock washer so it doesn't slip out of place. Now we're going to work on the top side of this. I'm going to undo that screw right there. That's for the dog. Before I remove the dog, I'm going to pull this piece right here up. Just comes up like that. And then you pull the dog up. Now to get that pinion stack out, we're going to remove those 2 screws. And with any luck, we'll be able to pull that straight out. That was easy enough. Now to get that eccentric out, we're just going to pull straight up, just like so. Now we can remove the bushing that's in there. There's one on this side and one on the cover side. While I pull this out, if you wanted to, you could replace these with a bearing. I don't think you need to, but hey, you might want to. Size on these will be 8 inner, 16 outer, and thickness of 4 millimeters. Now in general, to clean this or these parts up, I would likely use a Q-tip. Just kind of get inside those crevices, clean a lot of parts out. A toothbrush for the same sort of reason. But since we have a lot of thick dried on grease here, I'll use something with like Corrosion X to spray in there, break that grease down a little bit. Or I may even use an ultrasonic cleaner. I'll get this stuff cleaned up, come back to you guys. Sure to put all these things back together. All right, welcome back. I did not end up using the ultrasonic cleaner to clean this. I used the Corrosion X with some Q-tips and the toothbrush. Now let's go ahead and reassemble everything, oil it, grease it, all that good stuff. The grease I use is Penn Real Grease. The oil I use is Real X, but today I have Speed X, same company. And we're gonna start with oiling this bearing, which is the one and only bearing on this reel. Let that soak in for a little bit. Now in terms of the frame, what are we gonna grease? We're gonna have some grease inside there. Some around there. A little bit inside here as well. And some through that hole right there that the pinion will be going through. Last place I'll probably do is here where the eccentric goes through. And at some point we're going to grease that ramp there. Last place will be this side. Just a light amount is what you're doing here. You don't want to put too much. Now let's go ahead and add some grease to these bushings and start sticking those things in. What you'll notice is when I'm greasing these things, I grease the entire surface area of it. And I'm putting this one in first because once the crosswind gear is inside, you can't put it in. Now what I'm going to speed up will be the greasing of these things. What I will note is that I'm going to grease the entire surface area of this. And for the crosswind block, I'm going to add an extra amount of grease right inside that channel. Plus grease around that. Same will be for this and for the inside of this and the eccentric. When we get to here, I'll talk to you about this a little bit, kind of show you a few things on it. I'll also be greasing right here on the shaft. And that's just where it interacts with the crosswind block. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and speed this up while I work through greasing all these parts. All right, I think that's about it. I don't think I missed anything except for this part, which I want to show you anyhow. I stand corrected. There is this bushing that goes over that post for the crosswind gear. That came out with the crosswind gear, which is why I neglected to show you it. But there it is. I will show you that in a second. First thing we're going to start with is the pinion stack with the anti-reverse and the eccentric. The first component will be the eccentric. I'm just going to drop it straight through, looking like that. Now to make sure we're in the right position, we're going to take this. Notice that that's keyed, put it over the eccentric, and then rotate it to see that it's in the right position. And that looks good. Now let's go ahead and secure it with the screw. Don't forget that lock washer that came with it. You could add a dab of oil inside there. This just helps the screw from getting frozen inside there. Now I'm going to leave that in the open position and get started with this assembly right here. Drop the pinion in. Next, that bearing. I'm going to secure with the 2 screws on each side. A good trick here is to put a dab of grease on the tip of your tool that you're using. This way it holds and secures the screw that you're trying to screw into. All right, now we're going to go ahead and put the dog on. And I'm going to show you this. There's a 90-degree edge there, and then there's also one that's kind of a half of a box right there. The straight edge will be going inside that position right there. And obviously that ring or space in the middle will be going over that post. So it'll be set up looking something like this. Hopefully you guys can see that. Now to get this dog on, we're going to kind of pinch your finger over this so that end of the spring does not pop up and out. Take the tip, the very tip of the dog, push it around, and then drop it over the post. If you don't do it that way, just have a difficult time getting the tip of that dog past this eccentric. So you could do this first and then put the eccentric afterwards. I don't think it's that difficult to do, so let's go ahead and secure with this screw. Okay, next we'll be putting this piece on. And what I want to show you is that this is how it's set up. The thicker part goes facing down or facing down towards the bearing on the pinion stack. And this hooked end will be facing down as well. So if you ever got it taken apart, to put it back on, you're simply going to take one end, find that groove inside there, and pull it around, and then just make sure it's inside that groove. Let's go ahead and get this greased. And now to reinstall this, we're going to push that dog in, push this over it, and that hooked end will go inside that channel right there on the dog. Now that that entire top stack is done, we're going to go ahead and put the rest of these pieces in, get the bushing stick that over that post right there. Stick on the crosswind gear, rotate that down towards the bottom somewhere, like right there. Take our block looking just like that. Go kind of in and under that eccentric. Get that gap or that space on the back of the block over that post that's on the crosswind gear. Then drop our main gear in. Now we can take our main shaft. That flat side will be facing up going into the block. So I'm just going to go straight in. You may have to hold onto the block to get it positioned, but it should go straight in. Now we're going to secure that with the 2 screws here. Now if you remember earlier, there was a little bit of what I thought was corrosion on here, so I'm going to add some corrosion X to these holes just to help stave off any corrosion possibilities. All right, so now we can go ahead and take our shims. We had 2 on this reel, yours may be different. Stick those back on the end of the main gear. Take our bushing, stick that on there, just like that. And then closing that up. That looks good. Now we're gonna take these 4 screws and put them all around the case. And now we're done with the body of the reel. I did go ahead and clean the handle off as well. So I'll just show you what I would do to lube and grease this up. Take some grease, stick it right there along that. Like so. You can put a little bit on the tip right there, but what I like to do at this point is just go ahead and stick some oil inside that channel. We're just trying to help nothing get frozen in there. Press this button, open it up. Take some oil, stick it along there. You could grease inside there, but since this is oil, I'm just going to use that. And now we can put some oil right along there as well, where you push that button in. And then just kind of work it in. Now we'll take this also and work that in. And we're good. Last part we can do is add a little bit of oil right here and some at the top. Guys, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you're finding the information useful. It certainly helps this video go a long way to get exposure. All right, now let's move on to the rotor. Let's start with this side first. We're gonna undo that screw right there. Kind of get that out of the way. Now for this side, I'm going to remove the bail arm. But I'm going to hold onto this bail arm with these 2 fingers so it doesn't shoot up on me or pop up on me. And now I'm gently going to lift it up. Take your time. And exactly what happened is what I thought would happen. Sometimes this bar stays inside down there. Sometimes it comes out with it. One thing you will note here is that the longer piece goes into the bail arm. That shorter end or curved end goes into the receiver right there. Now I'm going to remove this cover, again holding down on it. The reason being is because I'm going to put my finger here and lift up that way. And that's because sometimes it did what it did. It'll shoot up on you and you don't want that going flying somewhere. Sometimes what will happen is it will stay inside this channel like that, and all you have to do is cover this spring up, push down, and let the force bring it up. Now we'll pop out the trip arm and the spring with that piece right there. Now what we have left here is the line roller assembly, and I'll kind of lay that out for you so you see what it looks like. We'll have a screw, a lock washer. You have a washer right there. Sometimes it stays in there, sometimes it's on top of this. Either way, it doesn't really matter, as long as you don't lose it. Then we have a line roller. It'll sit looking like that with that sloped end facing the bail wire. And then in here you have a bushing. Same kind of deal to clean this stuff up. So I'll see you in a bit. All right, now let's go ahead and grease that channel right there where the trip arm sits in. Right there where that spring rides, around that post and around this post. You can add some inside that channel if you want to. One last thing we'll do is grease inside here where it goes over the pinion stack. Now we're going to go ahead and grease the trip arm, this arm right here. And we can do some here as well and some around this. We definitely want to do a little bit of grease inside that hole right there on the bail arm. Now before we get started, I want to show you this piece. Notice that there's a recessed end. That recessed end will be facing up, so that flat side right there will be facing down inside the side right there like that. So this will be looking. I'm going to take our trip arm, set that in place. Want to make sure it's all the way to the top. Then we're going to take this piece right here, stick it into the spring looking just like that. And we're going to lay it down just like that. Some people like to push this all the way in there like that and then cover it up and then attach this arm to it. I find that a little difficult sometimes, so I'll show you the method that I use instead. Take this piece, stick it inside the spring looking just like that, dropping it into the channel. Now don't forget, we have the long side of this arm going into the bail arm. I'm going to take this now, instead of going in here, I'm going to stick it into the bail arm in that little slot right there, that little hole right there. Add a little bit of grease to keep it in place. Don't forget, that little channel right there will be what's riding, or that trip arm will be riding inside. Leave everything up looking just like this. Take this end of the arm, stick it into right there. Gently keeping our finger over this so that end of the arm doesn't come out of there. Then we get over the post, rotate it, make sure it's in place. We can kind of feel that it is. At this point, I'm going to cover everything, hold on to the bail arm with my finger as well, and I'm going to secure that before I move on. That's secured. Now I'm going to take this cover, slide it under my finger, just like that, and secure that. Now we can test it to make sure it works. And we can see that it does. Now we can go ahead and put the line roller back together. I'm gonna add some grease right here around that post. Some in that hole as well. Some inside here. And everywhere you see me using grease on here, you can use oil if you wanted to. I deal with a lot of salt water, so that's why I'm using the grease. Greasing the bushing as well. And we'll get started by sticking the bushing on. That line roller, again looking like that. Now we can take this cover and put it here, but something will just fall off. So instead of doing that, we're going to take the bail arm, get this set up, stick that through right there, get it started slightly, just about there is good. Drop this over it, and now we can line everything up and screw it in. Snug it down, but you don't need to over tighten it. Now we'll secure this side. If you notice right here, there's a little bit of gap between the post and that hole for it. So I'm going to squeeze this in slightly. Not too much. That's a little bit better. I forgot to add some grease inside this hole, so let's go ahead and do that. Then we're just going to pop that over there and secure it with the screw. The reason you saw me bend that in a little bit is because the more outward force, so like this, you have, the more difficult it is for the bail arm, for that to trip over when you release the spring. Now lastly, we're going to work on the spool and the drag washers. Take a flathead screwdriver, keep my finger over this like this, stick down and in to release that spring. Now we can pop these drag washers out. This we could take out if you wanted to as well, but we're not going to take it out. We're going to leave it there. And I'm going to get this all cleaned up, come back to you guys, show you what the setup looks like and how to put it back in. All right, now that's been cleaned up. We're going to take our first metal drag washer. Notice there's two prongs on there. Those prongs will be facing up in this direction. Stick it into the channel, drop it in place, looking like that. You can grease these drag washers. I would use something like Cal's Universal Grease. For these, I'm not going to do it. So stick in your first drag washer. Next will be one of our keyed washers, looking like that. Next washer, our next aired washer, with those two prongs sticking up again. Then our final washer and the top metal washer. Now if you look in here, there's a little channel or groove on the inside there. That is where we're gonna focus putting this retaining spring in. Take one end, start like so, inside that channel, then just drop the rest into place. You're gonna push in and down. When you get it in there, sometimes it sets into the channel that you want it to, and sometimes you gotta play with it, pop it back up. Just kind of keep your finger over it so it doesn't go shooting somewhere. But you will see when it's in that channel that it needs to be in. Now let's go ahead and put this reel together, test it out, make sure it works. Before I do that, I'm gonna grease that ramp right there. Drop that on. This is keyed, so make sure you rotate until it slips into place. Lock it with our nut, and it'll be ready to tighten. And we're gonna snug it down, but not too much. We just wanna line one of those flat sides up with either one of those holes, because we need to put that lock screw in there. And right here is where we'll be putting the screw in. Now we can take our click gear, drop that over it, then our spacer or our thrust washer, stick on our spool, rotate it until you find that slot, because that's also keyed. Then we can secure the drag washer just by rotating it down. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and test the drag out. Okay, feels good. Get our handle through. And of course, to secure it. I'm going to snug this down pretty good. That's good enough. And then we can cover this up with a cap. And let's see. Feels good. Let's check the flip out. That's good. Let's check it out with this. That's good. We see the anti-reverse is working. Turn it off. And no anti-reverse. Perfect. Now click here if you want to learn the easy way to reinstall your Penn Battle bail spring, or here if you want to learn how to break down and service your Daiwa BG4000. Guys, if you found the video useful, please hit that thumbs up button. Consider subscribing to the channel with the notifications turned on, and thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Gotta sneeze.
Excuse me, thanks.
All right, welcome back. Sounds good.